Welcome to Michael Potts F1, everything Formula One, but from photographers' points of view. Are you wondering which race to attend this year? Here's your full A to Z travel guide of possibly the biggest race of the year. I'll be looking at why the US Grand Prix is so popular. In this video, we'll look at the history, as well as giving you advice on where to stay, which tickets to get, and along the way, I'll show you some of my favourite photographs from past races. The track on the outskirts of Austin is simply magnificent. It's a wonderful place to come and watch Formula One racing cars at their best, and the organisers put on one of the best events of the year. The first race at the Circuit of the Americas, the current home of the American Grand Prix, took place quite recently in Formula One terms. It was 2012 that Formula One cars rolled out on this track that was the first track in the US to be custom built for Formula One. And what a track it is! The design philosophy is quite similar to those tracks that we see in Europe that follow the contours of the terrain. But this track is a lot more than that. It's borrowed inspiration from some of the greatest racing tracks around. And in doing that, it's created a sort of greatest hits album. Now that's what I call Racing Tracks 2012. The first corner, probably the best first corner in all of Formula One, has its apex on the top of a very steep hill. It's a blind corner that descends rapidly to the left. This is similar to Turn 4 at the former Indian Grand Prix track. The cars then descend a hill through a brilliant series of S's, similar to the Senna S's at Interlagos. Then we have another set of more pronounced high-speed corners, which are reminiscent of the Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel corners in Silverstone. On the back straight, there's a section that's inspired by the stadium section of Hockenheim, before the designers paid homage to turns 9 and 10 from Bahrain. The last slice of nostalgia is a reference to Istanbul Park's famous Turn 8. Here it is a multi-apex sequence heading down the hill with limited runoff. It's a mega corner. The track doesn't lose anything from borrowing from these other great circuits. In fact, it creates a track that's a favourite among drivers and fans alike. It's such a fan favourite that 2023 is set to smash the records for the best attended race in Formula One history. Currently, that record was set in 1995, where 520,000 people attended the Australian Grand Prix. It was the sport's final visit to the Adelaide track. Last year's Austin race was already 440,000 people. F1 hasn't always been that popular in Texas. During the first race weekend held here, there were only 117,429 fans in attendance. That just shows you how amazingly fast Formula One has grown in the US since then. But the American Grand Prix has been around a lot longer than 10 races. It goes way back to a series started by William Vanderbilt, the heir to the railroad empire. He founded the Vanderbilt Cup, which held races on New York's Long Island in 1904, on a course that was nearly 50 kilometers long, and it wound its way through a series of dirt roads in the Nassau County. The race was hugely popular, too popular unfortunately, as the 1907 race was cancelled because spectators died due to poor crowd control. Into this void stepped the Automobile Club of America. It was an enthusiast group who, after the official American Automobile Association had failed to sign up to the new Grand Prix regulations, they stepped in to stage an event in Savannah, Georgia, the first ever American Grand Prix. The fastest lap was set by Ralph De Palma. It's estimated that he won around 2,000 races. Obviously not all Grand Prix races, but that does put Lewis Hamilton's 103 victories in perspective. The American Grand Prix moved around a bit, but when the inaugural 1950 championship started, America was one of the 7 countries selected. The third race on that calendar was the Indianapolis 500. It wasn't titled the American Grand Prix. In that year, drivers only scored points from 6 races, so none of the European drivers competed in the 500, and the field was made up entirely of American racers. In the 1960s and 70s, the race moved to Watkins Glen in New York, and it was held there for 20 years. The early part was dominated by Jim Clark and Graham Hill. There were some classic races that took place here over the years. It was one of the last races in the calendar, so often decided the championship. However, in the late 70s, the track started to deteriorate, and the final race was held at the Glen in 1980. That race was won by Alan Jones driving a Williams, having fought back from being down in 17th place at one stage. The 1980s saw some of the strangest venues cropping up. There were street circuits in Detroit and Phoenix, which were less successful due to the large numbers of slow 90-degree corners, as the tracks needed to conform to the city's grid layout. One of the races in Phoenix was held in summer and could quite easily rival Qatar for being one of the hottest races around. But both of those were probably better than Caesar's Palace Grand Prix, which took place, effectively, in the Caesar's Palace car park. Just have a look at this bonkers track layout. With poor quality racing and poor attendance, the event just fizzled out. There was no Formula One in the US in the 90s. But it came back with a bang in 2000, back to the Indianapolis circuit. In mixed conditions, there was an epic battle between David Coulthard and Mika Hakkinen driving McLarens, and Michael Schumacher in a Ferrari, who eventually triumphed. Schumacher dominated the 8 races in Indianapolis, winning 5. He should have won 6, but an attempt to finish equal with Rubens Barrichello in 2002 failed, giving the Brazilian his only US win. The 2005 race stands out as one of the most difficult race weekends in Formula One history. It was in the height of the F1 tyre wars. There were 2 suppliers, Bridgestone and Michelin. Cars started crashing with left-hand rear tyre failures for the Michelin runners. Turn 13, which is exceptionally fast and banked, had been resurfaced, and the Michelin tyres weren't up to it. Michelin wanted the speeds around that corner to be reduced. They asked for a chicane to be put in place and made many other suggestions. Unfortunately, all were rejected, unlike in Qatar at the last race, where we also had tyre issues, and Pirelli managed to find a solution. No solution was forthcoming, and all the Michelin runners were forced to not start the race. It was a complete farce. Only 3 teams lined up, 6 cars on the grid. The fans were incensed. Ferrari would go on to win, but the cost to F1's reputation was massive, and the sport would disappear again at the end of 2007. It finally made a return in 2012 at the Circuit of the Americas. With the rise of Netflix Drive to Survive, Formula One has managed to gain a foothold in the American market. We now have 3 races held in the US, but I can see that number growing in future. One of the best races at this track was in 2021. It was a tussle between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton during their epic title battle. This time, Max coming out on top after some ferocious wheel-to-wheel racing between the two. This race is not cheap to attend. It's ranked as the 3rd most expensive race weekend of the year, when accommodation is included, behind the other 2 US Grand Prix. A 3-day general admission pass will set you back $475, which is quite high for general admission. There are a lot of very good general admission options around the track, so you can get some very good views of the cars. Outside the first couple of corners is a good place to head. There are a lot of TV screens here, and the views of the track are brilliant. However, this does get very busy, so I would recommend heading a bit further down the track, as there's a lot more space here, as the corners and the views of the cars are equally brilliant. Grandstand tickets start at about $580, but be careful where you go here, because some of the seats are located low down, and you have a lot of barriers and fencing between you and the cars. On the official event ticketing website, they do let you specify exactly which seats you want, which is brilliant. At the high end, the start-finish straight tickets cost around $2,250 for a 3-day pass. Hospitality packages start at around $1,299 for an F1 Experiences 3-day package, which includes pit walks, track tours, paddock tours, access to the F1 live event, as well as a host of other perks. They also have an option to go up the Grand Observation Tower, which is a lot of fun. Paddock Club tickets range massively depending on the price and the package you go for, but this can go up to $11,500 per person. This gets you the best food and wine, unbelievable access to the pits, the paddock, podium celebrations, but it is quite expensive. There are some interesting options at the track. On Saturday, there's a Haas Hangout ticket, which gets you access to the Champions Club, and you'll get to see either Gunther Steiner or one of the Haas racing drivers. I'm not sure if you'll need to buy additional tickets, but it's listed at $399, and that appears to be a relative bargain, as it includes all of your food and drink. If you have an RV, you can park it next to the straight between turns 11 and 12. It's a pretty cool place to park up. It does cost $8,000 per RV, and every person in your group will need a general admission ticket on top of that. But on the plus side, you don't need to wait in line for anything, as long as you remember to bring it with you. You can park your RV away from the track at $850 for the race weekend. Again, additional tickets will be required. There are cabanas available on turn 13, and for race day, this will cost $2,500 per person. The Killers are headlining on Friday night, so make sure you get your ticket upgrade for that, which is $89. In terms of accommodation, there's a wide range available in Austin, ranging from $80 per person per night in a bed in a dormitory. The most expensive hotel night I could find currently available for race weekend is at Hotel Zaza, and it's $5,000 for 3 nights. I would suggest having a look at Airbnb because there's a lot of very good options on that site. Taking your car will be expensive. The parking costs around $275 for the race weekend. There are rideshare options available. There are a number of different providers. It's always good to check to see which one is offering the best value for when you want to travel. The one thing to keep in mind here is that using the service, you won't get dropped off at the track, but rather about 2 miles away and then bused closer. Last year, I used this option, and most of the time it was quite affordable. It worked out cheaper for me than hiring a car. However, last year, I was taking a photograph of a line of yellow school buses and I missed seeing a wastewater drain and twisted my ankle when I stepped into it. Only use this option if you're very, very brave and very, very rugged. There is a shuttle service which provides about 600 buses leaving from 3 locations around the city, and this costs around $29. This is probably the most cost-effective way of getting to the track. This track has some of the best food trucks available, and the organisers have put on a lot of things for people to see and do. It really is one of the best F1 weekends out there. Thank you so much for joining me in this look at the Austin Grand Prix. I really hope you enjoy it. I hope that it inspired you to come and visit this race. It is one of the best in the calendar. Hopefully, I'll see you in Austin. Goodbye.